but I'm going to kind of start. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start from the very beginning. So if you've never used Teams before, you'll be able to start from the beginning with me and learn about Teams. I just wanted to point out first, before we get started, that you can go and do a Google search for Microsoft Teams. And one of the very first things that comes up here is this link for chat, meetings, calling, collaboration. This is a very nice resource on Microsoft Teams, because if you go up here to resources, they'll have demonstrations where they'll actually walk you through step by step on different things within Microsoft Teams. And you can actually explore and learn about it without actually having the app installed on your computer. So I find that very helpful. Also, there's a resource here for a quick start guide, which is a PDF document. I'm going to go ahead and share the PDF document in the chat here. I think we have chat. Let me see. Chat. Yes. And let me share my document with you. It's the same document that you could find here under the quick start guide, but just so that you have it, I'll provide it for you here. Okay. Did everybody get that? And just give me a thumbs up if you see that in your chat. A little guide that walks through all the different screens in Microsoft Teams. Great. So to start off with, if you've never used Microsoft Teams before, you're going to go into Office 365. Here on the portal, if you go into the staff email Office 365, you're going to log in. Here, I have already been logged in before, so it remembered my credentials and takes me right in. But up here in the upper left-hand corner, we have all of our different apps. And if I go over here and choose Teams, for instance, I can choose the Microsoft Teams app. And it launches Microsoft Teams. And this is what Microsoft Teams looks like from the web viewer. On all these apps, we can go and download. You see where I went up here in the upper left-hand corner, and I clicked on the link for Office 365. And you click on the link for Office 365, you'll get an option here that says Install Office. Part of our license for Office 365 allows you to install Office 365 locally on your home computer. And when you install the apps, what'll happen is it'll install Word and Excel and Outlook, and even it'll install Teams on your computer. And one of the nice things about having Teams installed on your computer is that if you see down here in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, I have a little icon. Let me close this so I don't get confused. You'll get an icon down here in your system tray for Teams. So Teams will always be running in the background, and that makes it very effective to use within your department or with your colleagues, because it's almost like you have the ability to telephone or text everybody in your organization and communicate very effectively with them. On your cell phones, whether you have an Android or an app device or an Apple device, my background is messing it up. You can install a Microsoft Teams app on your phone. And so whenever I get a text or an email or even a video call, like if I like FaceTime, it'll come right to my phone or to my computer or whatever device I have Teams installed on. So it makes it a very effective communication device. So the idea behind Teams was start out, a team is basically a collection or a group of people that you work with on a regular basis. It could be a division, it could be a department. Here you see in my Microsoft Teams window, I've got several groups that I'm a participant in. We have our text department, and then we have a team for text developers. I'm part of the Guided Pathways Steering Committee. They have a team. The College Information Technology Committee, they have a team as well. And every team has members. So I'm going to go over here and go to our text department team. And within each team, you're going to have team members where you can add people that are administrators of the team and members of the team that will interact and get posts and messages within that particular department. So whenever we have a department meeting, for instance, everybody knows to come to the same place and join the message, join the team in meeting in progress. They have the same place to go in and chat with each other. And I don't have to send out a unique Zoom link every time we have a meeting, because everybody knows that when we have a tech department meeting, we're going to go to Microsoft Teams to have our meeting on Teams. Within each team, you can have channels. So this would like be a committee and a subcommittee, right? So I can have a committee where I define all these people are going to be part of the text department. But you'll see there's a general channel, and then there's the tech security team. So we might have a smaller group that might be a work group that's working on something in particular that will be more restricted to just the people in that team as opposed to the entire group. So you have the ability to break your general team down into channels that have different things within them. As you can see up here at the top, we have a place for posts, and this is just kind of a message board on our team, and we can communicate and converse with each other. Then we also have a place where I can store files. And here we have some links to some documentation that we're sharing with each other. We have links to our staff meeting agendas. And then you have your options up here to upload and download and copy links if you need to send it somewhere else. We're going to go out here and so creating or joining a team is pretty easy. You can create a team and it's a team type. We typically just do a staff one. If you wanted to do a specialized type of team, you can choose through these different areas. Staff one, you have a description, the name of the team, how private, how restrictive you want it to be, and so on. We're not going to walk through the entire process of setting up a team, but I just wanted to remind you again that you have the tutorial on the Microsoft Teams website that can walk you through actually how to do that. So we have our teams, but the best part about Microsoft Teams that I like is the ability to communicate in real time with members of your team. Over here on the left-hand side, we have a chat feature. And here you see that recently I've been chatting with Tom. And I'm going to type a new message. Hi, Tom. How is the presentation so far? And here it shows me that the message was sent. You see it changes to a little icon that says it's been seen. And Tom sends back with it is fantastic with a little emoji. So even though we're all remote in text right now, when we come back on campus, we're going to continue using Teams because we have an instant message functionality on our computer where we can communicate on instant message. Now that message would have come here on my phone. Now, if you say that there's an alert that came through, so I knew immediately when Tom responded to it. Regardless of where I am, I wouldn't have to be sitting at my computer to receive that message. It actually would come into my phone. If I really wanted to get more information from Tom, I have the ability up here in the upper right-hand corner to do a video call or an audio call or a phone call. Tom, why don't you go ahead and hang out up from your Zoom call right now? And we're going to see what happens when I interact with Tom through Teams. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to do a video call for Tom.
Hello.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. So normally I would have my camera available as well, but because my camera is currently being used in my Zoom session, you're not actually seeing me. My image would be right down here in this bottom right-hand corner. But we can interact in real time using Teams without having to send him a Zoom link or anything. It's like an iPhone iChat or Google. You might have the Google Instant Messaging or any app that you have on your phone that allows you to immediately do video calls. You can do a video call or just a plain audio call, whatever you'd like as far as communication. And we use this right now in our department regularly. So even though we're all working from home, I can go in and do a chat with anybody. I can go in and start a phone call with anybody, and their phone will ring with a unique tone, and they'll be able to connect in. Now, if we wanted to connect in additional people, we can do that as well. Is there anybody here on the Zoom call that is also using Microsoft Teams on a regular basis? Dan, you use Teams, do you not? Okay.
Yes, for the CTIC meetings.
Oh,
and
that's
I'm trying to encourage it in the department, and got a little bit of traction, but not much.
Okay. So I'm going to see if I can add you to my little meeting here. Actually, now I'm getting confused. These are the participants in my Zoom, in my Teams meeting. So let's see what happens when I ask for Dan Bilter to join us.
I need to start Teams on my computer, I'm pretty sure. Hang on. It's booting up.
Okay. I guess I should have called somebody that already was running in Teams.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I'm up, but it's not. But I'm not getting any. I'm not getting the notice. So.
Okay, Tom, you're saying we should bring somebody else in?
Yeah, I can add somebody. Let's see if one of our developers are online right now.
Okay.
I can add them to it. Give me a second and text them.
Oops, sorry, now I'm calling you. Didn't mean to do that.
They're all in different.
Here, I'll stop that.
Okay, well, that's okay. I think you guys kind of get the message, get the idea here that as you're in a call, if you want to have multiple people on the same phone call or the same video chat, you can do so simply by adding their name down. If they're somebody that has the app running on their computer or on their phone, they'll be able to pick it up immediately and hear from it. There's a little bit of delay from Dan because he wasn't running the app on his computer at the time. So.
Okay, I think Sean says he's available. So if you want to add Sean into it, Sean Osborne. There he is.
There, Sean is in there. Sean, you are in a group, we're learning how to use Microsoft Teams. And right now you are with Tom and I, but also within a presentation for the campus community on Microsoft Teams. We don't see your video, but that's okay. We see your little icon down there. So as you can see, we can all join together. You can have your entire department, just like we are on a Zoom call, all within a particular team session. All right. Sean, really, that's all we wanted. Just wanted to show that we could call you. That's all right. Thanks, Sean.
Sure, no problem. Bye all.
Bye. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and hang up this meeting. Hopefully I'm going to hang up this meeting and not hang up the entire Zoom call.
I'll hang up and that should get us on here. And I'll join the Zoom meeting right after this.
Okay. There we go. All right, so I guess that was successful because we're all still here together. I didn't drop anybody. It is kind of confusing when you're doing Zoom and Teams at the same time, which hang up button to use. So we have our chat session that you can chat and message people. You can send files to each other within chat. I have a link for the different activities. So I have a voicemail that came in from Dan that I can listen to just like you're using on your phone. Let's take a look at one of our committees. This is the CITC committee, and within each team, you have an option up here to click the button to say meet, and this is where we would all meet together at the same time so that you could actually see and hear from all the committee members. Notice over here on the left-hand side, I also have a link to my calendar. Within my calendar, I can do right here under Microsoft Teams, I can do a new meeting and schedule a meeting with my team members, and they would be able to actually join the meeting right there from the team session. If you are working with people that don't normally use Teams, let me show you what my Outlook looks like. You can install on Outlook, and usually when you install Teams onto your computer, it'll automatically install this plugin for a new Teams meeting. So let's say I needed to have a meeting at 3:30 with Tom, and I can just click on New Teams Meeting and bring that over here. So all I do is like I'm scheduling a new meeting, but it's a Teams meeting, and I can invite my participants. And here's a subject we're going to about Teams. And my start and end time is at 4:30. And just like scheduling any meeting, you can determine in Outlook if everybody's available, they're available, and you click on send. So I didn't actually have to do a Zoom session or anything. I didn't have to get the link for the Zoom. Because it's integrated, I did a new Teams meeting, and right in the body of that email, Tom can click on the link to join the meeting. And if I happen to be in Teams myself, I can go to my calendar and join that particular Teams meeting or chat with the participants or whatever I need to do. So it's very, very simple to schedule meetings with the Teams plugin. It's just like scheduling any other meeting, but because you're using the little Teams icon, it actually creates the link for you. So that's something that I find it very helpful. So as we're uploading files, let me go over to one of the teams that I'm working with right now, the CITC committee meeting. We can post messages that everybody can see. Obviously, you can share files. So I'm going to go ahead and just upload a file from my computer. I'll upload the file that we shared in chat. So everybody knows that you can share files using Office 365. But the nice thing about sharing your files in Teams is that people will automatically have permissions to see them if they're part of the team, right? So any of the documents that are uploaded to any of the teams that I'm a member of, I will have the ability to see them. And it's a great way that you can collect documentation from your area or work on things together. If you wanted to have the document now in my team, I can open it, download it, share it with other people on my OneDrive if I needed to do that, and so on. So a great way to collaborate and work on documents together is by using the files functionality within Teams and making sure that everybody is part of your team, your team with permissions for that, right? So the members of this team, all these people that are members and guests and owners, they would all have access to view that document that I posted in the CITC committee team site.
Bob, there's a question in the chat.
Oh,
Someone
yeah.
said, can people make changes to the documents once they're uploaded?
People can make changes, but they'll need to upload their changes, right? In Teams is very similar to SharePoint. You add permissions to a particular document. If I can check out the document itself here by going to more to check out. That restricts it so that if I make changes, nobody else can make changes to it. And then I can go back and check it back in once I'm done. And that'll allow other people to make changes. I added a change. So you can keep track of things. And so you don't have multiple people editing things at the same time. You can check it out and check it back in, just like you do in SharePoint right now.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so activity is, of course, anything that's happening in my feed, documents that have been shared, comments from different teammates. If I can go back in and review things that have been posted before. Here's a message that we posted. We said, due to Flex Day, I posted this last week. Our next all hands meeting for our department is on Wednesday. One person really liked it. One person was sad that they didn't get to have a meeting. So I think that's about it that I wanted to share. Let's go through here really quickly and just do one of the Teams basics links together. We were doing most of our stuff on the desktop. Notice that you have the option to do things on your mobile device. Let's go through that link on the mobile device so you can see how it works on a phone. I can't really show you my phone, but it has some really cool features. It teaches how to do the app, how to manage the navigation bar, which is down here at the bottom. You can select the activities, and you can see the different things that are happening. Join a meeting. This will take 8 minutes to go through. I don't know if we all want to go through it. Spend 8 minutes going through it together, but you can get the idea. You can join meetings. Who is this person? I don't know who that person is. Oh, this is kind of fun. We have the ability to blur your background, which is kind of different than what you have in in Zoom. A lot of times in Zoom, we have to have a virtual background to share, but in Teams, you can actually, when your camera goes on, I can't demonstrate it here, but you can choose a virtual background, but you can also choose the option to blur your background. So you kind of looks a little similar to how Dan's picture looks, where his background is kind of blurry. It does the same thing, so you don't have to worry about people seeing stuff that's going on in the back. And that works out really well.
Mine was convoluted and done with Photoshop, though.
So it wasn't on purpose. I got you.
It was quite on purpose, but
Oh.
yes, it was convoluted.
All right. All right. So I think that covers all the things that I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to remind everybody about the resource that's online and that you can walk through the Teams Basic for Microsoft Teams. Use the quick start guide that I sent you to learn more details about how to make phone calls, reply to a post, mention somebody. So if you wanted to do a post, let me bring up Teams again if I'm saying that I really like, I'm sending a message here to Tom, but I want to say I really like Dan Vilter. He should get a message that I mentioned him. We talked about adding files. Of course, there's lots of ways that you can get help and learn more about Teams as you go through it. There's down here in the bottom left-hand corner, you have the icon for help. You go through different topics to get training about what's new. Really done a good job as far as interactive help guides, even videos on how to get started with Teams. Does anybody have any questions before we conclude today's session? Maybe if, let me stop sharing and maybe we can see everybody. If there's anybody here that is has used Teams in their department, maybe you can talk about your experiences. Dan, you had your hand up.
I had a question actually, and it concerned somebody who's not a permanent employee of the college. And you know, our situation is we have production meetings, and there's often we're bringing in a director or a designer or whatever. And if we were to plan those meetings on Teams, what would those people who aren't on campus have to have in order to interface with us?
Tom, can you answer that?
Sure. As long as they have a Citrus College email address, whether it be a student or a staff faculty email account, they should be in Teams, and you will be able to find them in the global search up on top. On the upper left-hand corner, you can type in a search for somebody, and as you type in their name, it'll start autofilling. And if they have a student email account, or like I said, in any of the Citrus College accounts, you should be able to find them.
Have that.
Yeah, they should have that. If
well,
you're
I
trying
mean,
to,
typically they don't. They're just in to do one production, and they don't, you know.
So if you're trying to add a guest, you can do that as well, but it's kind of limited because they won't have a full Office 365 license. So you can add them to a team or a chat, but they won't have all the features.
Okay.
Let me share this really quickly with you. When I'm adding people to a committee, it says that we can add people outside our organization as guests by typing their email address. So you can add people outside of Citrus College, but I'm not sure what kind of experience they're going to have. They're obviously going to have to run the Microsoft Teams application, be part of Office 365.
Okay.
But I'm sure at minimum, it'll allow them to see documents that you posted.
Yeah, they'll be able to join into that team or join into that conversation and have permissions to it, but they won't have some of the other features, the advanced features, I guess, for Office 365.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, that concludes our short training session today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or need to follow up, go ahead, Justine.
I just wanted to tell everybody, I wrote it in the chat, but please make sure your name shows up correctly. I know sometimes my daughter logs into my computer and I can see her name versus mine. So please make sure your name is listed. That's how we're going to give you credit for being here today. And then a survey is going to be mailed to everyone. And we really appreciate if you could fill that out because it gives us, information for future planning. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure Bob's going to stick around. Thank you, Bob, for a great workshop. And if anybody has any questions, I'm sure we're going to be here to answer those. Thank you, Tom, as well, for being here.
Problem.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Bob.
I have one question. This is Tina.
Yes.
I have a Teams set up for our future plans of getting back to the library and stuff like that. Is there any best practices on how to maintain and update it or keep it decluttered? I don't even know if decluttered is the word. We're just started, so I'm not quite even sure how to ask the question. But again, basically everybody's just throwing things into the chat features on all the different channels, and that's the way they're proceeding right now.
Oh.
Is there another way that we should be looking at this?
Well, I think just starting out, getting everybody to use it consistently. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, but Teams really didn't take off in our department in text until we said, this is how we're going to all have our meetings together. Every time we had a meeting, it was always on Teams. And people got into the habit of using Teams to communicate. Instead of picking up the phone, they would use Teams to chat and call each other and utilize it heavily. So basically, like we heard this morning from our speaker about creating a culture, this was creating a culture around Teams where we're going to leverage the Teams app to communicate as opposed to trying to do some stuff on Zoom and then do some stuff over the cell phone, some stuff via email. We said, hey, we're just going to do all of our communications through Teams. And once people got the hang of it and started using it on a regular basis, it really became a lot easier. We knew where to go to communicate with somebody. We knew where to go to post our documents and where to retrieve our documents. So I think that's the very first step. Make sure that everybody is kind of bought into the idea that this is how we communicate with our department. And so it doesn't really matter if you're on campus or remote. We're going to continue meeting and communicating using this tool in the future. As far as keeping things organized, you can still do your, organize things into folders on Teams if you need to do that. Usually if you post something into the chat, it ends up under the files anyway, so you can pretty much find it. Search functionality is really good, so you can finally search for things pretty easily. So I think as far as being cluttered or disorganized, obviously you'd want to post links to documents instead of copies to documents. If you're doing a lot of sharing, those probably are recommendations that I would do.
Yeah, we haven't started putting documents in yet. We've just sort of been brainstorming through the chat feature on the different channels we created. So, I mean, again, we're just at the very beginning stages of all this. I'm a fan of Teams, so you don't have to tell me on anything. I think it's just a wonderful asset and a wonderful tool. And, I think it's going to get things done a little more efficiently when we're all able to access it on our own times, because we all don't go on Teams at the same time sometimes, unless we schedule, well, we haven't scheduled any meetings on Teams at this point. But I mean, again, if we're just brainstorming, we're throwing our ideas out, and someone will pop, I mean, mine's always up, so it will pop up and say, oh, so-and-so, I go look and see what they're talking about, and I'll either comment on their respond to their, their suggestions, or add my suggestions, or go on from there. But I mean, again, I think it's going to be a valuable asset for us.
Yeah, and also it displays your availability.
Where is that? Where do we see that on Teams, the availability?
Yeah, so let me share my Teams really quick here. Let's do this. So up here we have, see where that little red dot is on my profile? This tells me that I'm currently busy because I'm on my calendar. I'm currently in a meeting teaching this particular class. But as you're communicating to your team members, you can actually see here Sean has a little red icon on his. He's currently busy and doing something else. There's yellow where we don't really know if somebody's available. Green where we can see somebody is available. So there's the ability to actually see the availability if somebody is actually logged in. I can know that I can communicate with that person right away.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, anything else? All right, thanks everyone. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll end the session today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bob.